In the snowy suburbs of Chicago, two boys live worlds apart. Aiden Collins, born into luxury, has everything money can buy, except true friendship.
Aiden
Across
happened
town
intuition
lives
invited him
Ethan
to his warm,
Morales, a
and in this small
hardworking
cozy
but poor
space, their
teen
friendship
who struggles to afford even basic winter clothes as Christmas approaches. When Aiden unexpectedly crosses paths with Ethan, their lives intertwine in ways neither imagined. Despite class differences, a powerful bond forms between them. As Christmas nears, Aiden plans a heartfelt surprise to help Ethan while protecting his dignity. Their friendship becomes a reminder that compassion, not wealth, defines the true spirit of the holiday season. Snow fell over Chicago in thick, drifting waves, blanketing the city with a cold stillness that seemed to echo through every street and alleyway. The December wind had a sharpness to it that cut through even the warmest coats, but the city, in its usual resilience, continued to breathe with life. Lights glowing from windows, buses rumbling through slush-filled roads, and people hurrying from one place to another with scarves wrapped around their faces. Through this icy landscape glided a sleek black Tesla, its polished surface reflecting the lights of passing stores and decorated Christmas trees. Inside the heated, quiet cabin sat Aiden Collins, a 17-year-old with an air of effortless privilege. His blonde hair was neatly styled, his jacket designer, and his expression relaxed, though his eyes held a certain distance, a wandering heaviness he couldn't quite name. Aiden belonged to a world built on wealth. His father owned a booming real estate empire, managing skyscrapers and luxury hotels. His mother was a celebrated fashion designer who traveled between Chicago, New York, and Los Angeles. Their home, no, their mansion, stood in an exclusive suburb lined with gated driveways and sparkling holiday displays. Everything in Aiden's life had always been beautiful, expensive, and perfect, or at least that was how it looked from the outside. But perfection had a strange loneliness to it. Aiden felt it every time he returned to a silent house, every time his parents were in different countries, every time he opened his mouth to speak and realized there was no one truly listening. Today, as the Tesla approached the older, worn-down part of the city, Aiden watched snow swirl along cracked sidewalks and small brick shops that had seen better years. His driver glanced at him in the rearview mirror. "Sir, are you sure this is the right area?" the man asked politely. "Yeah, you can stop here." The driver slowed the car and parked by a narrow street where the holiday decorations were more modest and the buildings more tired. Aiden stepped out, the cold hitting him instantly, despite his expensive coat. He pulled the collar higher and looked around with curiosity. He didn't come to this area often, almost never, but something about its authenticity, its simplicity, drew him in today. A tiny shoe repair shop with a faded sign caught his eye. Morales Shoe Repair. Inside, a single yellow light glowed faintly through the fogged window. With a hesitant breath, Aiden pushed the door open. A bell chimed overhead. The shop was small, cramped, and clearly struggling. Tools hung on the walls, a workbench stood in the middle, and the heater in the corner buzzed loudly but gave off almost no warmth. The air smelled faintly of polish and leather. Behind the counter stood a boy around his age, lean, dark-haired, wearing an old hoodie that looked far too thin for the weather. His hands were roughened with work, his eyes tired yet alert. This was Ethan Morales, though Aiden didn't know his name yet. Ethan had been stitching the sole of a worn-out boot when the bell chimed. He looked up, surprised to see someone dressed like Aiden step into his world. Teenagers with wealth didn't come here. Adults did. People with broken shoes. People who couldn't afford to replace what could still be fixed. Hi, Aiden said, holding a pair of sneakers carefully in his hands. "Do you fix shoes?" Ethan blinked as if the question was too obvious to answer. "Yeah," he said politely. "That's what the shop's for." Aiden gave an awkward laugh. "Right, sorry, I've never really been in a place like this." "I figured." Ethan replied, though not unkindly. He set aside the boot and stepped closer. His eyes widened slightly at the sneakers Aiden was holding. They were limited edition. Expensive, rare, and definitely out of place in a shop like this. These are... wow. Okay, yeah, I can fix them. What's wrong with them? The stitching on the side ripped, Aiden said, carefully pointing it out. They mean a lot to me. My mom got them for me on one of her trips, and, well, she's not home much, so... He trailed off, suddenly aware he was oversharing. Ethan didn't react with the usual judgment or curiosity people had when they realized Aiden came from money. Instead, he nodded simply. I get it, Ethan said. Something can be expensive and still have meaning. Aiden relaxed a little. Yeah, exactly. Ethan took the sneakers from him, examining them with a professional eye. I can fix these. Might take a day or two. That's fine, Aiden said. I'm not in a rush. Ethan hesitated before calculating a price. He wanted to be fair. People like Aiden looked like they could pay big, but Ethan hated the idea of charging more just because someone was rich. That wasn't who he was. $20, Ethan said. Aiden blinked. Only $20? Yeah, Ethan replied, shrugging. It's just stitching. That seems low. That's the price, Ethan said firmly, as if challenging him to argue. Aiden smiled. All right, I trust you. Ethan didn't smile back, exactly, but something in his expression softened. As Ethan wrote up a small repair ticket, Aiden looked around the shop more carefully. The heater was barely working. The walls were cracked, the shelves were nearly empty, and Ethan, someone his own age, was trying to keep the place running alone. Do you work here full-time? Aiden asked. Pretty much. I come after school, but lately I've just been here more. Aiden frowned. Why? Ethan didn't answer immediately. His jaw tightened slightly. Family stuff, he said finally. We need the money. Aiden nodded slowly, trying not to stare. This world was so different from his. He came from a place where... The next evening came with an even colder wind blowing down Chicago's narrow streets. The temperature had dropped suddenly, turning yesterday's soft snow into hardened sheets of ice that cracked beneath the feet of anyone brave or desperate enough to tread outside. Christmas lights blinked from windows and street lamps, their warm glow contrasting sharply with the brutal winter air. Cars moved slowly on the slippery roads, and pedestrians wrapped scarves tighter around their faces as they hurried home. Inside his warm bedroom, Aiden Collins sat at his desk, staring at the glowing screen of his laptop without really seeing anything. The room around him was perfectly decorated. White walls, soft lighting, expensive furniture. His bed looked like something out of a luxury catalog, but none of it made him feel at ease tonight. His mind kept drifting back to the small shoe shop with its broken heater and its quiet, determined owner. Ethan Morales. Aiden couldn't stop thinking about him. His rough hands, his steady eyes, the way he spoke truthfully without fear or pretense. Aiden had met hundreds of people in his life, wealthy kids at school, celebrities through his mother, businessmen through his father. But hardly anyone ever spoke to him the way Ethan did. No one treated him like just a person. Aiden closed his laptop with a frustrated sigh and pushed back from the desk. His phone buzzed. It was a text from one of his wealthy classmates. Party tonight. You coming? Drinks, music, no parents. Aiden stared at the message blankly, then turned off his phone. A party in a mansion with shallow conversations and loud music felt unbearable right now. He wanted something real, something grounding, something that didn't feel hollow. Without overthinking it, he grabbed his coat and headed downstairs. The Collins house was silent as always. Lights were on, but warmth was missing. His father was traveling for work again, and his mother was in New York preparing a fashion show. The staff greeted him politely, but everything felt mechanical, emotionless. Heading out, sir? The butler asked. Yeah, I'll walk. In this weather? The man asked, surprised. Aiden shrugged. I need some air. The butler didn't question him further. Aiden stepped outside into the cold and felt the wind hit his face like a slap. But something about the bite of winter felt strangely refreshing. It reminded him he was alive. He walked carefully along the icy sidewalk, hands shoved deep in his coat pockets, breath misting in the air. The more he walked, the closer he got to the part of town where Morales Shoe Repair stood. It was as if his feet knew where he wanted to go before his mind did. By the time he reached the old district, the streets were quieter, fewer cars, fewer lights, but more life, real life. He passed a bakery closing for the night, a small grocery store with flickering lights, and a group of kids laughing as they built a snowman on the sidewalk. When he approached the familiar little shoe shop, he saw the warm yellow light glowing from inside again. The open sign was crooked but lit. Crist of snow clung to the window frame. Aiden hesitated only a moment before opening the door. The bell chimed softly. Ethan looked up from his workbench, surprised. He was wearing the same old hoodie, his sleeves pushed up, revealing cold-reddened arms. A small metal lamp illuminated his face, casting shadows under his eyes. "You're back," Ethan said, sounding more startled than annoyed. "Yeah," Aiden replied, brushing snow off his shoulders. "I wanted to check on the sneakers." "You're early," Ethan said. "They're not finished yet." "That's okay," Aiden said quickly. "I didn't come just for that." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Then why did you come?" Aiden opened his mouth, paused, and shrugged. "I guess I just wanted to hang out, if that's okay." Ethan didn't say anything for a moment. He studied Aiden's expensive coat, the slight pinkness in his cheeks from the cold, and the way he shifted awkwardly like someone unused to asking for company. Finally, Ethan nodded toward the corner chair. "Sure, have a seat." Aiden smiled lightly and sat down. The chair creaked under him, but he didn't mind the discomfort. Ethan returned to stitching the sneaker, his hands moving deftly, almost gracefully, despite the cold. After a moment, Aiden asked, "So, how was your day?" Ethan snorted. "Long, cold, same as every day." "Any customers?" "Not enough, but some," Ethan said plainly. Aiden watched him work, fascinated by the quiet determination in his movements. "You really take this seriously." "It's my dad's shop," Ethan replied. "I try to keep it running the way he would have wanted to." Aiden nodded slowly. "You must get tired." "Yeah, but tired is normal. Bills don't pay themselves." The heater buzzed again, louder this time, then faded back into its weak hum. Ethan rubbed his hands together to warm them, and Aiden noticed how dry and cracked his knuckles were. "You really don't have better gloves?" Aiden asked before he could stop himself. Ethan gave him a look. "We talked about this yesterday." "Right," Aiden said. "Sorry." "You apologize too much," Ethan muttered. "Maybe, but I don't want to offend you." "You haven't," Ethan said simply. Aiden's smile lingered. "Good." Silence settled between them, but it didn't feel awkward. It felt peaceful, comfortable. Finally, Ethan broke it. "So, what's a guy like you doing in a place like this again? You probably have a party or something to be at." Aiden shrugged. "Yeah, there was a party. I didn't want to go." "Why?" Aiden hesitated before admitting, "Because nobody there cares about anything real. It's all noise and bragging and pretending to be perfect." Ethan leaned back slightly, considering him. "Must be nice, though, having money, having a house like the ones up north." Aiden tilted his head. "Would you believe me that I say it doesn't?" The next morning, snow still clung stubbornly to the streets of Chicago. The sun struggled to peek through heavy gray clouds, casting a pale light that reflected off the icy sidewalks. For most teens, a day like this would mean rushing to school or staying indoors. But for Aiden Collins, today held something different. He pulled on his coat, tightened the scarf around his neck, and walked out with a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in a long time. Ethan Morales was already at work by the time Aiden reached the shop. The bell above the door jingled, and Ethan looked up from the pair of sneakers he was mending. "You're early," Ethan said, eyes narrowing in surprise. "I promised I'd come back, and I didn't want to wait too long." Aiden shook his head, but didn't seem annoyed. "Some people would say I'm crazy to let a rich kid hang around here." "Maybe," Aiden said lightly, "but I don't care what other people think." Ethan returned to the sneakers, muttering, "Good, I don't either." Aiden pulled a chair closer to the workbench and watched Ethan work. There was something hypnotic about the rhythm of the stitching, the care with which he handled the worn leather. Aiden realized that for all the wealth and luxury he had never seen anyone pour so much dedication into something so simple. "Why do you do this?" Aiden asked suddenly, breaking the silence. Ethan looked up, a thread hanging loosely from the sneaker. "Do what?" "Fix shoes, take care of everyone's old stuff, work so hard every day." Ethan shrugged. "It's what I know. It's honest work. My dad did it. He believed in fixing things that others would throw away. I guess I just like carrying that on." Aiden nodded slowly. "I've never met anyone like you." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Do you mean that as an insult or a compliment?" "Compliment," Aiden said quickly. "Definitely a compliment." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Outside, the wind rattled the windows, but inside the shop, the small space felt quieter, warmer than before. Aiden realized he liked being here, not because of the shoes or the shop, but because of Ethan, the way he seemed so grounded, so unshakable, even in the harsh cold of life. "You want some cocoa?" Ethan asked, putting down the sneakers. "It's just powder stuff, but it's hot." "I'll take it," Aiden said. Ethan busied himself in the tiny back room, and he could hear the clink of mugs and the whistle of a kettle. When Ethan returned, 2 steaming mugs were placed carefully on the counter. Aiden wrapped his hands around the warm ceramic. "Thanks," he said. "No problem," Ethan replied, settling back on his stool. They drank in companionable silence for a few minutes, watching the snow fall outside. Aiden noticed the small imperfections in the shop, the crooked shelves, the faded posters, the scuffed floor, and for the first time, he appreciated them. They made the place feel real, lived in, meaningful. "You really don't have to say much to make someone feel comfortable," Aiden said after a while. "And you really talk too much to make people feel awkward," Ethan smirked. Aiden laughed, and for the first time in weeks, he felt like he was breathing freely. They spoke about small things, school, hobbies, music, while Ethan worked on the sneakers. Aiden was careful not to dominate the conversation, but he asked questions, listened, and slowly a bond began to form. Not the kind of forced friendship he had with classmates or family acquaintances, but a real connection. "Do you ever get tired of all this?" Aiden asked, gesturing around the shop. Ethan paused, thinking. "Tired? Sure. But it's my responsibility, and I like knowing that I can make someone's day better, one pair of shoes at a time." Aiden nodded thoughtfully. He realized that despite the struggles, Ethan carried himself with pride, dignity, and strength. It wasn't just hard work, it was integrity, something Aiden had always admired in others but rarely seen up close. The conversation drifted naturally, slowly moving toward Christmas. Aiden noticed Ethan's eyes cloud slightly when he mentioned it. "Not excited this year?" Aiden asked gently. Ethan shook his head. "It's not like I get presents, or new clothes, or, well, really anything." Aiden's chest tightened. He couldn't imagine a Christmas without gifts, or warmth, or joy. But he didn't want to pity Ethan, either. He wanted to help in a way that mattered. "Some people don't need gifts to enjoy Christmas," Ethan added after a pause. It's just cold this year and busy and hard. Aiden didn't know what to say, so he nodded silently. He was beginning to understand the weight Ethan carried. Hours passed quickly. They shared cocoa, laughed over small jokes, and spoke honestly in ways Aiden had never done with anyone else. The snow continued to fall outside, creating a world frozen in white, quiet and beautiful. By the time Aiden realized it, evening had arrived, and the streets outside were slippery with ice. "You should head home," Ethan said finally, putting the sneakers down on the counter. "It's dangerous out there." "I know, but I'll be back. Tomorrow." Ethan looked up, slightly surprised. "You're really coming back?" "Yeah," Aiden said firmly. "I want to. I like it here." The days passed quickly after that first extended visit. Snow continued to fall over Chicago, settling in thick layers on rooftops and streets. The city glimmered with Christmas lights, wreaths on doors, and strings of colored bulbs flickering across shop windows. For most people, the season was about excitement and shopping, parties and decorations. For Aiden Collins, it had taken on a new meaning, one he hadn't expected. He walked again to Morales Shoe Repair that morning, feeling the crisp air bite at his cheeks. Every step felt purposeful, yet different. He wasn't going because of sneakers anymore. He went because he wanted to see Ethan Morales, because their conversations had become something he looked forward to. Pushing open the shop door, Aiden was greeted with the faint smell of leather and polish. The heater buzzed weakly, barely warming the small space. Ethan looked up from a pair of worn boots, eyebrows raised. "You're back," Ethan said, surprised. Aiden smiled. "Morning. How's everything?" Ethan shrugged. "Same as always. Cold, busy, and slightly frustrating." Aiden laughed softly. "Sounds familiar." Ethan went back to his workbench, picking up a pair of sneakers. "What brings you here today?" "Thought I'd see how the shop is holding up for Christmas. Everything looks small, cozy, but in a good way." Ethan looked around. "Yeah, small, cozy. That's one way to put it. Cozy is one word, starving in the cold is another." Aiden laughed quietly. "I get it, but I like it here. Feels real." For the next hour, they worked in companionable silence. Aiden helped hold shoes, learn basic stitching, and even polish a pair of boots. Conversation flowed between them, less awkward than before, more comfortable, as if they were beginning to understand each other's worlds. "You ever get to celebrate Christmas properly?" Aiden asked cautiously. Ethan paused, hands stilling. "Properly? Not really. We make do. Mom tries. Sometimes we get a small tree, a couple of decorations, cocoa if we have time. That's it." Aiden frowned, feeling a pang of guilt. He was used to opulent decorations, enormous trees, and piles of gifts. He realized he had never thought about what Christmas meant to someone who didn't have money to buy luxuries. "I want to change that," Aiden said impulsively. Ethan glanced at him. "Change it? How?" Aiden hesitated. "I don't know yet, but I want to make it special for you. Not charity, just something nice. You deserve it." Ethan shook his head. A small smile tugged at his lips. "I can't take that. You don't have to—" "I insist," Aiden interrupted. "Consider it a gift between friends." Ethan studied him quietly, then shrugged. "All right, but nothing big, just small." Aiden nodded eagerly. Small is perfect. The day passed quickly, their laughter mingling with the soft scratch of needles and the faint hum of the heater. Outside, snow fell silently, creating a quiet world of white. When Aiden finally left, he felt an unusual warmth in his chest, as if a small seed of something important had taken root. Walking back through the snow-covered streets, Aiden realized that Christmas wasn't about gifts or parties for him anymore. It was about connection, care, and moments that felt real, and for the first time, he was excited to share it with someone else. The morning after Aiden's visit, the cold in the city seemed sharper than ever. Snow had turned the sidewalks into a slippery maze, and the wind cut through even the thickest coats. Most people hurried along, their faces hidden behind scarves. But Ethan Morales stepped carefully, his hoodie pulled tight, carrying a bundle of shoes to repair. The small shop was quiet, the heater sputtering as usual. Ethan sighed, rubbing his hands together. His fingers were red, dry, and sore from constant work. The broken heater barely helped, and the cold air crept through cracks in the walls, chilling him to the bone. Today, though, the cold was not the only weight he carried. Ethan glanced at the worn sneakers on the counter, the ones he had almost finished for Aiden. A small smile crossed his face as he remembered the boy's enthusiasm yesterday, the way he had tried, stumbled, and laughed while learning to stitch. But the thought also brought tension. Christmas was coming, and the idea of celebrating felt impossible. Money was tight. Even basic necessities were hard to afford. Ethan knew his family would make do, but he felt the familiar sting of helplessness. The phone rang, and Ethan answered. Quickly. "Hey, Mom." His mother's voice was warm but tired. "Ethan, did you manage to get the boots finished for Mr. Collins?" "Yes, Mom. Almost done." "Good. Listen, honey, we don't have enough for new jackets or shoes for Christmas this year. I know you've been working hard." Ethan's jaw tightened. "I know, Mom. It's fine. We'll manage. We always do." "You don't have to handle everything alone," she said softly. "Just keep safe." "I will," Ethan promised. He hung up and stared at the floor. Every word from his mother reminded him of the impossible balance he had to maintain. He wanted to enjoy Christmas like other kids, but reality made that impossible. Broken boots, threadbare coats, and cold floors were all part of the life he had inherited. Aiden arrived later that afternoon, snow melting slightly beneath his polished boots. He paused at the door, brushing snow from his coat, and smiled when Ethan looked up. "Hey, how's it going?" "Same," Ethan replied, shrugging. The snow continued to fall in soft sheets, layering the streets of Chicago with a quiet, wintry stillness. The city's usual chaos was muted beneath the heavy blanket of white, and the glow from street lamps reflected off icy sidewalks, casting golden hues across the neighborhood. Most people were busy preparing for Christmas, shopping, decorating, or rushing to parties. But for Ethan Morales, the day began as it usually did, early, cold, and full of responsibility. The small shoe shop smelled faintly of polish and leather. The heater sputtered weakly, barely warming the space, and Ethan rubbed his hands together to chase away the chill. He was finishing a pair of boots for a longtime customer when the bell above the door jingled. Ethan looked up, expecting another adult, but instead saw Aiden Collins standing there, his coat dusted with snow and his cheeks pink from the cold. "You're here early," Ethan said, surprised. "I couldn't wait," Aiden replied with a grin. "Thought I'd help." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Help? You barely know how to hold a needle properly." "I'll try," Aiden said confidently. "I want to." Ethan shook his head, a small smirk forming. "All right, if you insist." The next hour was spent in a mixture of silence, concentration, and laughter. Aiden held shoes, polished leather, and attempted to follow Ethan's instructions on stitching. His fingers were stiff, and more than once he made mistakes, but Ethan guided him patiently, correcting him without judgment. "You're improving," Ethan admitted after a while. "Not as slow as yesterday." Aiden laughed. "Thanks, I'm a quick learner." Ethan rolled his eyes. Sure. Despite the cold, the shop felt warmer than it had in weeks. There was a rhythm to the work, the scrape of the needle, the tap of a hammer, the soft hum of the heater, and amidst it, a growing comfort in each other's company. After a while, Ethan put down the shoes and looked at Aiden. "You know, you could have just come here to hang out. You didn't need to try so hard." I like helping, Aiden said simply. And I like being here. It feels real, different from home. I don't think I've ever felt this grounded before. Ethan studied him quietly. You've got a lot of things, Aiden. Money, comfort, people who cater to you. But you're missing something, huh?
Yeah.
I think I am. I don't know how to explain it. Everything feels perfect, but empty. Ethan leaned back against the counter, folding his arms. Funny, isn't it? I have almost nothing, but somehow I feel responsible, needed, alive. Life's tough, but it has meaning. Maybe that's what you're missing. Aiden considered this, watching Ethan's hands, calloused and skilled, moving instinctively over the leather shoes he was repairing. I think you're right, he admitted quietly. I want that too, to feel important, for something real, not just wealth. A silence fell over the shop, but it was comfortable this time, filled with mutual understanding rather than awkwardness. Then the bell rang again, and a young woman entered carrying a pair of worn boots. Ethan greeted her with a smile, taking the boots from her. Aiden noticed the way he treated her with respect and care, asking about her family, about her day. The warmth in Ethan's tone wasn't fake, it was genuine. You're really good at this, Aiden said once the woman left. I shrugged. It's not about being good, it's about doing right by people. That's all. Aiden nodded, impressed. You really care. Of course I care, Ethan replied. If I didn't, I wouldn't do this job. I wouldn't try so hard. Aiden smiled, feeling a small warmth in his chest. He had never seen anyone care so much about work, about people, about life in such a simple, honest way. As the afternoon wore on, the conversation between them became easier, more personal. Aiden shared stories of his home, his family, and the life he lived, though he left out the details that might seem boastful. Ethan shared more about his family, the little struggles that came with running the shop, and the quiet traditions that made Christmas special despite their lack of wealth. I wish things were easier for my brother, Ethan said, suddenly, eyes distant. He deserves new shoes, warm jackets, little things most kids take for granted. Aiden frowned, thinking of his own luxurious Christmases, piles of presents under trees and warm homes. I want to help, he said immediately. Not charity, just make things better. Ethan hesitated. The week passed quickly, each day bringing Aiden closer to the small shop on the snowy streets of Chicago. The snow had deepened, covering cars, rooftops, and sidewalks in a thick, glittering layer. For most kids his age, the city would have been a playground of parties, shopping, and holiday decorations. But for Aiden Collins, excitement now meant something very different. A chance to spend time with Ethan Morales, learning, helping, and understanding a world he had never truly known. That morning, Aiden arrived early, breath forming clouds in the cold air. The bell above the door jingled as he entered, and Ethan looked up from a pair of worn boots, threading a needle with precise movements. You're early, Ethan said, eyebrows raised. I couldn't wait, Aiden replied with a grin. Thought I'd help. Ethan shook his head, smirking slightly. You're obsessed with this place. You know that. Obsessed? Maybe, Aiden admitted. But it's worth it. For the next hour, they worked side by side. Aiden polished shoes, held leather steady, and attempted stitching under Ethan's patient guidance. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the windows, but inside the shop there was a quiet rhythm, broken only by their conversation and occasional laughter. I've been thinking, Aiden said, after a while pausing as he wiped the polish from a boot, about Christmas. Ethan looked at him skeptically. What about Christmas? I want it to be special for you. Not like a gift from someone rich to someone poor. Something real. Something you'll actually enjoy. Ethan's hands paused on the leather. You don't have to do that. I want to, Aiden insisted. You've done so much for me already, letting me hang out, teaching me, and sharing your world. I want to give back. Ethan considered him quietly. Small, then, he said finally. Just small. Nothing extravagant. You have to promise. Aiden nodded eagerly. I promise. Small is perfect. They continued working, but both boys felt the excitement in the air. For Aiden, it was about planning something meaningful, something that went beyond gifts or money. For Ethan, it was about learning to accept kindness, something he rarely allowed himself to do. Later that afternoon, Aiden began sketching ideas on a piece of paper, ignoring the cold seeping through his gloves. What do you like, Ethan? Not material stuff, things that make you happy. Traditions, memories, food, things that matter. Ethan leaned back, thinking carefully. I like cocoa, hot cocoa, and cookies if we have time. Maybe a small tree, just a little one, nothing fancy, and music. Christmas music. That's enough. Perfect, Aiden said, writing everything down. That's exactly what I want. Simple, real, and fun. Ethan's expression softened slightly. You really care about this, huh? I do. I want to make you happy this Christmas. Not charity, friendship. Ethan shook his head with a small smile. You're strange, but I like it. They spent the rest of the day preparing the shop for the small celebration. Aiden suggested clearing a little corner, decorating with handmade ornaments, and setting up a table for cocoa and cookies. Ethan helped, laughing at Aiden's excitement, enjoying the unusual company and attention. By evening, the small corner of the shop looked cheerful despite the modest decorations. A tiny tree, handmade ornaments, and a soft blanket for seating transformed the space. Outside, the city glimmered with lights, snow falling silently, reflecting the warm glow from the windows. Aiden paused, looking around. This looks perfect. I can't wait for tomorrow. Ethan glanced at him. You're taking this way too seriously. It's just small, simple. But yeah, it's nice. Aiden smiled. Small and simple can be amazing, too. They sat together, sipping cocoa, the heater humming weakly, the snow falling outside. The moment felt quiet, but full of anticipation. Both boys understood that tomorrow would be a turning point, a Christmas that... The morning of Christmas Eve arrived quietly, blanketed in fresh snow that reflected the early sunlight like glitter. The city was calm, streets almost empty, as if everyone were hurrying home to prepare for the holiday. But for Aiden Collins, excitement and anticipation made the cold air feel warmer. Today wasn't about presents or parties, it was about seeing Ethan Morales smile, about creating a memory neither of them would forget. Aiden arrived at the shop earlier than usual, breath-forming clouds in the crisp winter air. He carried a small bundle carefully wrapped in brown paper, tied with a simple string. Inside were the few things he had planned for Ethan: Cocoa Mechs, some cookies, and a tiny handmade ornament he had spent the last few days creating. Nothing extravagant, just enough to show care. Ethan was already inside, repairing a pair of boots. The heater sputtered, the room smelled faintly of leather and polish, and the winter sunlight fell through the windows, casting long shadows across the worn floorboards. You're early, Ethan said, glancing up. I couldn't wait, Aiden said with a grin, setting his bundle down carefully. Ethan raised an eyebrow. You really take this Christmas thing seriously, huh? Of course, I want it to be perfect. Small, but perfect. Ethan chuckled softly and returned to his workbench, but Aiden could see a flicker of curiosity and something else, an anticipation Ethan rarely allowed himself to feel. They spent the morning working on shoes, polishing leather, and stitching repairs. Outside, the snow fell steadily, muffling the sounds of the city. Inside, the shop was quiet, but alive with small movements, conversation, and laughter. After a while, Aiden spoke carefully. Ethan, are you ready for your Christmas surprise? Ethan looked up sharply, skepticism clear in his eyes. I don't know if I like surprises. This isn't a normal surprise. It's just small things I wanted to share with you, things that matter. Ethan studied him for a moment, then nodded slowly. All right, I'll trust you. Aiden handed him the small bundle. He looked at it, hesitant, before untying the string and lifting the paper carefully. Inside were the few things he had planned for Ethan: cocoa mix, some cookies, and a tiny handmade ornament he had spent the last few days creating. Nothing extravagant, just enough to show care. Ethan's eyes widened slightly, a rare reaction. You made this? I did. I wanted it to be something simple, something meaningful. Just for you. Ethan studied the ornament, turning it over in his hands. It's beautiful. Not just the ornament. Everything. You work so hard, you take care of people, and I wanted to show that I see it, that I care. Ethan looked at him, the usual skepticism in his eyes softening. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. Just enjoy it. That's all I want. For the first time in a long while, Ethan allowed himself to smile freely, holding the small ornament as if it were a treasure. The heater hummed, the snow fell silently outside, and for a moment, the shop felt warmer than it had in weeks. Thank you, Ethan finally said. Really? You're welcome, Aiden replied, grinning. Now, Coco? Ethan nodded, setting the ornament carefully on the counter. Aiden helped him mix the cocoa and poured into 2 mismatched mugs. They added a few marshmallows and carried the mugs to the small corner of the shop they had decorated. Sitting together on the floor, sipping the warm cocoa, the 2 boys laughed over small mistakes in the recipe, shared stories, and quietly appreciated the moment. It wasn't about grandeur or expensive gifts. It was about presence, care, and connection. After a while, Ethan picked up the tiny ornament, looking at it with a thoughtful expression. You know, I've never had a Christmas like this before. Not really. Just the morning after their first small Christmas celebration, the streets of Chicago were quiet, still covered in fresh snow that sparkled under the pale winter sun. The city moved slower, as if taking a breath before the holiday festivities reached their peak. For Aiden Collins, the excitement of yesterday lingered in his chest. Not the thrill of presents or decorations, but something deeper. The quiet satisfaction of knowing he had made a difference, however small, in Ethan Morales' life. Aiden arrived at the shop, boots crunching in the snow, cheeks flushed from the cold. The bell above the door jingled as he stepped inside. Ethan looked up from a pair of scuffed boots, a faint smile on his face. You're early, Ethan said, voice carrying a hint of amusement. I wanted to see how the morning's going, and check if the ornament survived the night. Ethan glanced at the tiny wooden star on the counter, untouched and still gleaming. It's fine. It didn't move an inch. Aiden smiled. Good. That's the important part. For the first hour, they worked quietly. Aiden polished leather, Ethan stitched carefully, and the heater hummed weakly, offering barely enough warmth. The snow outside made everything feel still, almost suspended in time. Inside, the rhythm of work and occasional laughter created a space where the 2 boys could be themselves, without pretense or expectation. Do you ever think about your future? Aiden asked, suddenly, breaking the silence. Ethan paused, threading a needle carefully. Sometimes, but I don't really have the luxury of dreaming big. School, work, helping my family, those things come first. Aiden nodded thoughtfully. I get that. Back home, it's the opposite. I have everything I could want, but sometimes I feel lost. Like, I don't know what matters. Ethan looked up at him, eyes curious. Lost? You have everything. How can you be lost? Because I don't know what to do with it. Money, gifts, parties, they're meaningless if you don't know why they matter. I've never felt needed. I've never done something just because it meant something, not because someone expected it. Ethan's hands paused in the leather, and he studied Aiden for a long moment. I never thought about it that way. I guess maybe everyone's missing something. Some people have comfort but no meaning. Others have meaning but struggle to survive. Aiden nodded slowly, feeling a connection he hadn't expected. Exactly. And that's why I wanted this Christmas to be different. Not about presents or wealth, but about caring. About being here. Really here. Ethan returned to his work, a small smile tugging at his lips. You really are obsessed with this place. Maybe, but I like it. I like being here. With you. Ethan looked at him, surprised by the sincerity. With me? Yes, Aiden said softly. You make this real, worthwhile. I never knew that before. For the next hour, they continued to work together. Aiden struggled to keep up with Ethan's speed and precision, but he tried harder than ever. Ethan corrected him patiently, offering guidance without criticism. They laughed over mistakes, exchanged small jokes, and shared stories about their lives. You really care about people, Aiden said quietly. Not just in this shop, but everywhere. I've never met anyone like that. He shrugged modestly. I just do what I have to. My family, my customers, they matter. And I guess I like seeing things fixed. Shoes, life, doesn't matter which. Aiden smiled, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the weak heater. I think that's amazing. I want to be like that too. I want to care about something real, not just fancy stuff. Ethan paused, glancing at him. You mean it? I do, Aiden said firmly. That's why I'm here. And I'm not leaving anytime soon. For a moment, Ethan studied him, then nodded, a faint laugh escaping. Fine, but don't get too comfortable. You still have a lot to learn. I'm ready, Aiden said confidently. The afternoon passed in a blur of work, laughter, and conversation. Each moment deepened the bond between them. Outside, snow continued to fall, blanketing the city in white. But inside the small shop, warmth came from more than the heater. It came from friendship, understanding, and trust, growing quietly but steadily. As the day drew to a close, Ethan leaned back against the counter, exhausted but happy. You know, this week has been different. The morning of Christmas Day dawned quietly over Chicago, the city blanketed in pristine white snow. Streetlights reflected off icy sidewalks, and the usual sounds of traffic were muffled under the soft cover. For most families, it was a day of celebrations, gifts, and meals. For Aiden Collins, it was something far more meaningful. A chance to spend the holiday with Ethan Morales and see the boy truly smile. Aiden arrived at the shop early, boots crunching against the snow, cheeks pink from the cold. In his hands was a small paper bag, carefully packed with more cocoa, a few extra cookies, and a tiny surprise he had spent the past week preparing. His heart raced as he imagined Ethan's reaction. The bell above the door jingled as he entered. Ethan looked up from a pair of scuffed boots, a small smile on his face. "You're early," he said. "I couldn't wait. It's Christmas. I have an idea." Ethan raised an eyebrow, curiosity mixed with skepticism. "An idea? I hope it's not complicated." "Not at all," Aiden said, grinning. "It's simple. I want to spend the day here with you. Just us. Cocoa, cookies, maybe music, a little fun, nothing fancy. Just Christmas, small but perfect." Ethan paused, studying him. "You really mean that?" "I do. No gifts that don't matter, no extravagance, just a Christmas we can enjoy together." Ethan shrugged. "All right, fine, but you're doing all the cocoa making." Aiden laughed. "Deal." For the next hour, they set up the small corner of the shop they had decorated the week before. Aiden plot out the cocoa mix, cookies, and even a small thermos of milk. The tiny ornament, the wooden star he had given Ethan, was carefully placed on the little tree. "It looks nice," Ethan admitted quietly, a rare softness in his voice. Aiden smiled. "Small things can be special too." They spent the morning laughing, sipping cocoa, and decorating shoes for customers who came in quietly, surprised to find the shop transformed into a cozy little corner of holiday cheer. Aiden noticed the way Ethan's face brightened, how his usually serious eyes sparkled as he worked. It was more than any gift could offer. It was the joy of being present, of feeling valued and seen. You really think small things matter? Ethan asked suddenly, pausing as he adjusted a pair of boots on the counter. I know they do, Aiden replied. It's not about money or status, it's about care, effort, and moments like this. That's what Christmas should be about. Ethan considered this quietly, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. I I guess you're right. I've never had Christmas like this before. It usually feels like chores and cold mornings. Not this year, Aiden said softly. This year, it's about us, enjoying the moment. Hours passed quickly. The heater hummed softly, cocoa mugs were refilled, and the boys laughed over small mistakes. Spilled cocoa, cookies that crumbled too easily, and decorations that didn't stay in place. Outside, the snow continued to fall, glimmering under the faint winter sun. Inside, warmth radiated not just from the heater, but from shared laughter, friendship, and trust. At one point, Ethan paused and looked at Aiden. You know, this is the first time in a long while I felt happy at Christmas. Really happy. Aiden smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest. That's exactly why I wanted today to happen. I wanted to see you smile, not because of presents or fancy decorations, but because it matters to me that you feel joy. Ethan's eyes softened. I I don't know what to say. You've done more than anyone else has in years. You don't have to say anything, Aiden said. Just enjoy it. That's enough. The afternoon passed in a blur of small, joyful moments. They shared stories of past Christmases, Aiden of extravagant yet empty celebrations, Ethan of quiet, simple holidays, and laughed at the contrast. They polished boots, stitched. The morning after Christmas arrived quietly over Chicago, streets sparkling with a fresh layer of snow that hadn't yet been disturbed by cars or foot traffic. The city felt peaceful, calm, and almost magical. For Aiden Collins, the previous day's small Christmas celebration at the shop was still fresh in his mind. The warmth, laughter, and quiet connection he had shared with Ethan Morales replayed over and over, bringing a smile to his face. Aiden bundled himself against the cold and made his way to the shop. The bell above the door jingled as he stepped inside, and he found Ethan already there, carefully sorting shoes and boots. The heater sputtered weakly, barely keeping the chill away, but the shop seemed brighter than ever, filled with a warmth that had nothing to do with the temperature. You're early, Ethan said, looking up with a faint grin. I wanted to see you, and make sure everything's okay after yesterday. Ethan nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. Everything's fine. Yesterday was different, in a good way. Aiden's grin widened. Good. That's exactly how it should have been. They began the morning quietly, working on shoes, stitching and polishing, and occasionally sipping the leftover cocoa from the day before. The city outside was still wrapped in snow, the silence broken only by the soft crunch of boots on icy sidewalks and the faint hum of distant traffic. Inside the shop, time seemed to slow, allowing the boys to enjoy the rare comfort of each other's company. You know, Aiden said after a while, I didn't expect Christmas to feel like this. I thought it would be about gifts, parties, and all that stuff. But it's not. It's being here, sharing moments like yesterday. That's what matters. Ethan paused, threading a needle carefully. I know what you mean. I've never had Christmas like that. Usually it's cold mornings, chores, and hand-me-downs. But yesterday was different. Better. Aiden nodded. Exactly. And that's why I wanted it to be special. Not expensive, not flashy, just meaningful. Ethan glanced at him, his eyes reflecting a rare softness. You really care about people, don't you? I try. I want to. And I wanted you to feel that. Not because I have to, but because it matters to me. Ethan studied him for a long moment, and then, without a word, returned to his work, a small smile lingering. For the first time in a long while, he allowed himself to feel appreciated, seen, and cared for. The hours passed in quiet companionship. Customers trickled into the shop, many surprised by the festive decorations and the small warmth that filled the space. Ethan greeted them with his usual patience and care, but there was an extra lightness in his manner, a subtle joy he had never shown before. Aiden helped when he could, holding shoes, polishing leather, and occasionally offering a joke or story to lighten the mood. "You know," Ethan said quietly as they worked, "I never thought Christmas would enjoy this much. I didn't think it was possible. But it is, because of yesterday. And you." Aiden smiled, feeling a deep warmth in his chest. "I'm glad. That's all I wanted, to make it real, meaningful, and memorable." "Memorable, yeah. I think this is the first Christmas I'll actually remember." "Exactly. And next year we can do it again. Maybe bigger, maybe more, but still meaningful." Ethan shook his head with a small laugh. "Don't get ahead of yourself. 1 year at a time." They spent the rest of the morning tidying the shop, finishing repairs, and quietly enjoying each other's company. The snow outside began to melt slightly as the sun rose higher, reflecting the light off the icy streets. But inside, the warmth lingered. Friendship, understanding, and the joy of having shared something special. As noon approached, Ethan set down a pair of repaired boots and looked at Aiden. "You know, I didn't expect much this Christmas. I thought it would be cold, quiet, and boring. But it wasn't. Not because of gifts or anything fancy. It was this. Us. Here. Together." Aiden nodded, smiling. "Exactly. That's what matters. Not money, not gifts, just care and presence." Ethan's eyes softened further, reflecting gratitude who rarely showed. "You really are different, Aiden Collins. I don't know many people who would do this. Not for anyone. Not for me." "I'm not different," Aiden said quietly. "I just learned what matters. And it turns out you matter. That's enough for me." They shared a quiet moment, sipping cocoa from mugs that had long been refilled. Outside, Chicago continued to glisten under its winter sun, the snow sparkling as if reflecting the warmth that now filled the small shop. Ethan finally spoke, a rare, honest smile on his face. "You know, I think this was the best Christmas I've ever had. Not because of gifts or decorations, but because it felt real, honest, and happy." "Exactly. That's what I wanted. Real happiness. And now we have it." The bell above the door jingled as a customer entered, and Ethan looked up with a practiced smile. But even as he greeted the visitor, there was a lingering glow from yesterday and this morning, a warmth that no heater could provide, a memory that neither boy would ever forget. Outside, Chicago was quiet under its snowy blanket. Inside Morales Shoe Repair, two boys, one from wealth, one from struggle, sat together, sipping cocoa, sharing laughter, and enjoying the simple joy of being present. For both of them, the morning after Christmas was more than just the day after a holiday. It was a reminder that connection, care, and friendship were the most meaningful gifts of all. Snow drifted lazily across the gray December sky as Ethan stood outside the community center, watching clouds of his breath disappear in the icy air. He had come early, earlier than anyone else, because he couldn't sit still at home. Not with everything he and Noah had planned, not with the weight of what tomorrow could mean. Christmas Eve was only hours away, and for the first time in years, the holiday didn't feel like something distant meant for other people. It felt like hope. Inside the center, strings of white Christmas lights glowed softly along the windows, illuminating the volunteers who were setting up tables, gift baskets, trays of warm food, and boxes of winter clothes. Ethan paused, taking in the sight. Last year, he would have never imagined himself here, working alongside people who actually needed him, rather than people who needed something from him. At the back of the room, Noah was helping a little kid adjust a thrift store jacket 2 sizes too big. The boy grinned at him like Noah was some kind of superhero. Ethan couldn't help smiling at the scene. Noah noticed him from across the room. "You're early," he called, jogging over with that warm, easy smile that always seemed to thaw the cold around Ethan. "You too," Ethan replied. "Couldn't sleep." Noah laughed. "Join the club." They stood side by side, watching volunteers set up the last of the decorations. The small town Christmas Eve celebration for families in need had been Noah's idea, but Ethan had turned it into something bigger. Food drives, winter clothes donations, holiday gifts for kids who wouldn't have had any otherwise. It wasn't about pity. It wasn't about charity for show. It was about doing something real, something that mattered. No one nudged him lightly. "You okay?" "Yeah," though he exhaled deeply. "Just thinking about how different things are now." "Different in a good way?" Ethan nodded. "In a way I didn't know I needed." Noah's smile softened. "Same." An hour passed as they worked, filling shelves, carrying boxes, arranging gift bags, and slowly people began flowing into the community center, brushing snow from their coats and shaking off the cold. Children ran toward the table filled with donated toys, their faces brightening instantly. Parents whispered thanks with tired but grateful eyes. Volunteers laughed and served warm meals. The room buzzed with noise and life. Ethan found himself moving from table to table, helping wherever he could, handing out warm gloves, pouring hot chocolate, sitting on the floor with kids who wanted to show him their new coloring books. He felt like he was part of something real, something he hadn't felt in all his years of growing up surrounded by luxury. As he finished wrapping a donated bicycle with a big red bow, he heard Noah's voice behind him. "Come outside with me for a second," Noah said quietly. Ethan followed him through the back door where the world was quieter, just falling snow, faint Christmas music drifting from the building, and the glow of streetlights reflecting off ice. Noah shoved his hands into his pockets and leaned against the wall. "I've been wanting to tell you something." Ethan felt his chest tighten. "What's up?" Noah hesitated, his breath turning into pale fog. "You know, earlier when you said everything feels different now, I guess I feel that too. I've never had someone believe in me the way you do." Ethan swallowed. "You believed in me first. You were the first person who didn't care who my parents were or how much money I had. You just treated me like a person." "That's what you are," Noah said softly. "A good one." Ethan felt something warm bloom inside him, something that steadied the parts of him that always felt lost. "I hope you know that everything we're doing here, I couldn't have done any of it without you." Noah chuckled, brushing snow from his hair. "Ethan, you could have done anything you wanted. You just didn't know what you wanted yet. And you helped me figure it out." Ethan replied. They stood quietly as snowflakes collected on their jackets. The air between them was calm, like a shared breath, fragile but warm. Ethan wasn't sure when their friendship had grown into something deeper, something that made wearing Noah's old hoodie feel more comfortable than any designer coat, something that made him want to show up, really show up, for someone other than himself. "Tomorrow's the big day," Noah said, breaking the stillness. "Our Christmas giveaway. Think everything's ready?" "Yeah, but what about you? Do you have everything you need for Christmas?" Noah shrugged. "I mean, you know how it is. I'm just happy to help other families have a good holiday." Ethan's jaw tightened slightly. I wish you didn't have to worry about stuff like that." Noah smiled, but it didn't fully reach his eyes. Well, maybe you won't have to anymore. Noah raised a brow. What do you mean? Ethan inhaled, breath shaking just a little. Come with me tomorrow morning, before the event. I want to show you something. Noah laughed lightly. That sounds mysterious. It's not bad, just something important. Noah looked at him curiously but nodded. Okay, I trust you. Good, Ethan whispered. They went back inside and the afternoon passed in a blur of laughter, warm meals, and endless small moments that felt bigger than either of them could explain. When the event wound down and families began to leave, the glow in the center felt brighter somehow, like the whole town had breathed out a sigh of relief, even if only for one night. Ethan and Noah stayed until the very end, stacking chairs and sweeping floors long after the last volunteer left. Exhaustion tugged at their bodies, but neither wanted to leave first. As they walked out into the snowy night together, Ethan looked over at Noah, who was pulling his jacket tighter around himself. Street lights reflected in his dark eyes, and something about the moment felt heavy with meaning. You ready for tomorrow? Ethan asked. Noah nodded, smiling gently. More ready than I've been for anything in a long time. They walked home side by side through the falling snow, their footsteps soft on the quiet street. The cold bit at their cheeks, but somehow it didn't feel as sharp tonight. Not when something warm, something hopeful, was unfolding quietly between them. Tomorrow would be Christmas Eve, and for the first time, neither of them would be facing it alone. The morning of Christmas Eve dawned quietly over the small town. Soft, pale light spread slowly across the snow-covered streets, turning them silver blue. Ethan stood at his bedroom window, watching the world wake beneath a blanket of stillness. His breath fogged the glass, and for a moment he simply stared, feeling something he hadn't felt in years: anticipation. He dressed quickly, pulling on a heavy winter jacket over a thick sweater. Today mattered. Not just for the community event, not just for the families they were helping, but for Noah. The thing Ethan planned to show him wasn't flashy or extravagant. It wasn't meant to impress. It was something deeper. Something he hoped would change Noah's life the way Noah had changed his. His phone buzzed. Noah, I'm outside. Ethan grabbed his gloves and stepped out into the crisp morning air. Noah stood at the bottom of the steps, cheeks pink from the cold, breath rising in soft clouds. He wore the same beat-up jacket Ethan knew wasn't warm enough for mornings like this. Ethan felt a flicker of worry, but Noah greeted him with his usual easy smile. Morning, Noah said. Where are we going? You'll see, Ethan replied, nodding down the street. It's not far. They walked side by side, boots crunching through fresh snow. Christmas decorations glowed faintly in shop windows, not yet fully awake. Rows of houses were quiet, chimneys sending thin streams of smoke into the sky. The world felt gentle, peaceful, almost magical. Noah broke the silence first. You're being weirdly mysterious. Ethan smirked. You'll get over it. Noah bumped his shoulder lightly. I might. They rounded the corner, heading toward the older part of town. The houses here were smaller, weathered from years of storms and seasons. Ethan slowed as they approached a narrow two-story house with frost on the windows and a small wooden porch. The place was simple but warm-looking, like something out of a quiet storybook Christmas. Noah stopped. Ethan, what is this? Ethan took a breath. Come inside. He unlocked the front door and led Noah into the small living room. Sunlight spilled through the windows, catching dust motes drifting lazily through the air. Furniture stood neatly arranged: a couch, 2 chairs, a small table, a few shelves. It looked lived in, but no one lived here. Noah turned slowly, confused. I don't get it. Whose place is this? It's yours, Ethan said softly. Noah froze. His eyes widened, going from confusion to disbelief. Ethan, what are you talking about? This can't. Ethan lifted his hands carefully, trying to steady the moment. I didn't buy you a mansion or something ridiculous. Nothing like that. This house is old. It needed repairs I helped fund, but the community chipped in too. The town did this. The same people you've helped these past months. The same people you never asked anything from. Noah stared at the living room like he was afraid to touch anything. Why would you do this for me? Ethan stepped closer. Because you've lived your whole life worrying about things no one your age should worry about. About having a roof, having heat, having stability. And I can't take away every struggle you've ever faced, but I can help make sure you don't face the next ones alone. Noah's throat worked as he swallowed. Ethan, you didn't have to. I know, Ethan whispered, but I wanted to. The house was quiet for a moment, just the soft ticking of an old wall clock and the distant sound of wind brushing snow off branches outside. Noah's eyes shimmered faintly. He blinked hard and looked away, but Ethan saw it anyway. You deserve to breathe, Ethan said, to not be scared of tomorrow. Noah let out a shaky breath, one that sounded like it had been trapped in his chest for years. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. Just look around. Noah walked slowly through the small house, touching the kitchen counter, opening the narrow pantry door, stepping into the modest bedroom with its neatly made bed. He moved quietly, like someone walking through a dream he didn't fully trust. Ethan watched him from the doorway, heart pounding with something like hope and fear intertwined. He didn't want Noah to feel overwhelmed. He didn't want him to feel pitied. He only wanted him to feel safe. When Noah returned to the living room, he stood in front of Ethan, hands shaking slightly at his sides. Ethan, no one's ever done anything like this for me. I know. I don't have much to give you back. You've already given me more than you think. Noah shook his head. I haven't given you anything. You gave me a reason to be better, a reason to show up every day, a reason to care about something beyond myself. You don't even realize how much you changed me. Noah looked down, snow melting slowly on the hem of his jacket onto the wooden floor. I don't know how to handle something this big. Then let me help you. Not because you owe me anything, not because I'm expecting anything, but because you're my friend, and I care about you. Noah hesitated, then stepped forward and wrapped his arms around Ethan. It wasn't a light hug. It wasn't a polite hug. It was full, tight, filled with years of unspoken fear, gratitude, exhaustion, and the quiet relief of finally being seen. Ethan hugged him back, burying his chin lightly into Noah's shoulder. You're not alone anymore. Not ever again. Noah didn't speak, but the way his hands gripped the back of Ethan's jacket said everything. After a long moment, they pulled apart. Noah wiped at his eyes quickly, embarrassed. Ethan pretended not to notice. We should head to the community center soon. Big day ahead. Yeah, just give me a minute. Take all the time you need. Noah looked around the house one more time, his house, and something new settled over his face. Something like hope. Something like a future. When they finally stepped back out into the cold morning air, the sun had risen just a little higher, scattering gold across the snow. Noah locked the door behind him, not because he had to, but because he finally had something worth protecting. The community center had never been this full. By the time Ethan and Noah stepped inside, warm air rushed toward them, filled with chatter, children's laughter, and the soft melodies of Christmas songs playing through old speakers. The place glowed with decorated trees, paper snowflakes taped to walls, and strings of white lights that made everything shine a little brighter. Noah stood still for a moment, taking it all in. His heart felt strangely lighter after the morning he had shared with Ethan. The weight he'd carried for years wasn't gone completely, but it felt shared, less sharp, less lonely. Ethan nudged him gently. Ready? Noah breathed out, a steadying breath. Yeah, let's do this. Volunteers moved around them with practiced rhythm, handing out food, passing warm blankets to families, and arranging toys for children who could barely contain their excitement. The smell of cinnamon, roasted turkey, and freshly baked rolls floated through the room. Ethan and Noah split up to help different stations, but their eyes kept finding each other across the crowd. At the toy table, Noah kneeled beside a little girl wearing mismatched boots. He asked as she shyly picked up a teddy bear with a red bow. "Do you like that one?" She nodded. "He looks like he needs a home." Noah's throat tightened. "Then he's perfect for you." Meanwhile, Ethan helped a group of teenagers unpack boxes of winter coats. They laughed at his inability to fold anything neatly. "Dude, rich boy can't fold," one kid teased. Ethan smirked. "I can fold. I just choose not to." The kid grinned. "Yeah, right." But they worked together anyway, and it felt good, real, simple, and human. Hours passed in warmth and movement. No one seemed to notice the cold outside. No one seemed to feel alone. Families sat together eating Christmas meals. Kids ran around showing Noah and Ethan their gifts. Volunteers handed out hot chocolate refills with smiles that softened even the hardest edges. At one point, Noah leaned against a table, exhausted but happy. Ethan came up beside him, handing him a steaming cup. "You okay?" Ethan asked. "Yeah, just tired." Ethan chuckled. "We're almost done." They watched the room for a moment, every corner filled with life. "You did good, Noah," Ethan said, his voice quiet but sincere. Noah shook his head. "We did good." A soft smile touched Ethan's face. "Yeah, we did." As the event began to wind down, families trickled out into the snowy afternoon, carrying bags of food and gifts. Little hands waved goodbye. Parents mouthed silent thank yous. Volunteers cleaned tables while holiday music played its final notes. Finally, the room stood nearly empty. Noah and Ethan sat at one of the tables, finishing the last of their hot chocolate. The warm lights above them buzzed softly, reflecting off the wood and casting a comforting glow around them. "So," Noah said slowly, "I still don't know what to say about the house." "You don't have to say anything. Just let yourself have a home. You deserve that." Noah looked at him, really looked at him. "It means everything, more than you know." Ethan's eyes softened. "I think I know." Silence settled between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It felt like the kind of silence that comes after something important, something that didn't need more words. Snow started falling harder outside the windows, a soft storm, peaceful. White flakes drifted down like quiet blessings over the town. Noah's gaze returned to Ethan. "You changed my life." Ethan laughed softly. "You changed mine first." Noah leaned back in his chair. "It's weird, isn't it? How we started. A rich kid, with everything. A poor kid with nothing. And somehow we ended up here." "Yeah, but it wasn't about being rich or poor. It was about seeing each other." "Yeah, it was." Ethan hesitated, then said, "You know you're not alone anymore, right? Not today, not tomorrow, not after that." Noah felt warmth spread through his chest. "I know." They cleaned up the last of the tables together, stacking chairs, turning off lights, sweeping the floor. The quiet of the nearly empty center felt like a deep breath after the chaos of the day. As they stepped outside, snowflakes caught in Noah's hair. Ethan brushed one away, without thinking. "You cold?" Ethan asked. "A little." Ethan draped an arm around him. "Come on, I'll walk you home." "Home," Noah repeated, softly, tasting the word like it was new. The walk was slow, the kind where neither wanted the moment to end. Streetlights glowed yellow through the falling snow, turning the night into something warm despite the cold. Houses were lit with Christmas decorations, twinkling stars, wreaths, glowing windows. When they reached Noah's new house, the porch light flickered on, bathing the snow in a soft halo. Noah stopped at the steps. "Ethan?" "Yeah?" "Why me? Why did you care so much?" Ethan smiled, honest and steady. "Because sometimes you meet someone who makes you want to be better, someone you don't want to lose, someone who feels like home." Noah's breath hitched slightly. "You feel like home too." Ethan stepped closer, his voice softer than the snow falling around them. "Merry Christmas, Noah." Noah smiled, small, shy, real. "Merry Christmas, Ethan." They stood there for a long moment, the quiet world wrapped around them like a blanket. No fear, no distance, just warmth. Noah finally said, "This is the best Christmas I've ever had." Ethan's eyes softened. "It's just the first of many." Noah nodded, believing him. As Ethan turned to leave, Noah watched him walk down the snowy street, each step lit by golden streetlights, each breath visible in the cold air. And for the first time in his life, Noah didn't feel like he was watching the world move on without him. He felt like he was stepping into a future that finally had room for hope, a future where he wasn't alone, a future where friendship had saved them both, a future that started on this quiet Christmas Eve. And with that, the story ends, not with an ending, but with a beginning.